Simelang Afsheni Ralocha Sanwanani Mulweni. My name is Naledi Mfoloe, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the latest edition of the African Diaspora News channel, where we unravel the stories that shape our world and our community. Now, today's story centers around Chinese mining companies, specifically Jading Mining, who have set their sights on the granite deposits in Zimbabwe's district. Now, while this may sound like an opportunity for economic development, for the native Zimbabweans who call this land home, it's actually a matter of survival and the loss of their heritage. Recently, villagers in Modoko were evicted from their ancestral homes to make way for this mining company. The company claims that there were no plans to forcibly display the people. However, the lack of transparency and mounting fears of the villagers told a very different story, if you ask me. Many of them are worried that they will be pushed off the land that has been in their families for generations, which is land that holds not only their homes, but their livelihoods as well. And also, not only that, but also their ancestors' graves. Let's have a look at this.
The area they want is where we live and where our cattle graze. It's our source of income. We wonder where we will go. The area they want is too huge. Our ancestors' graves are there too. We wonder where they will relocate them.
Now, this situation is sadly reminiscent of what we might call new colonialism, right? Which is a term that has been gaining quite a lot of traction across the African continent. I mean, we've seen this before, haven't we? Foreign powers come to Africa promising development, but all too often it's at the expense of our people, our heritage, and our land. The Chinese, much like any other foreign players, have been increasingly involved in African resources. But the question is, at what cost? And I can't help but feel a sense of deja vu when I hear about the mining projects in a country like Zimbabwe, where the land is not only a source of livelihood, but also a deep connection to one's identity. The idea that a foreign company could come in, uproot families, and destroy ancestral graves without regard for the people's well-being is quite heartbreaking, because this isn't just about land, but this is about stripping people of their dignity and their connection to their heritage. And I believe we need to talk about what this really means, because the Chinese government and businesses often justify their investments in Africa by claiming that they are helping with development and infrastructure and the betterment of African nations. But as we've seen in Modoko, right, the impact on local communities is often quite devastating. Chinese companies come into these areas, extract resources, and in many cases, they bring in Chinese labor rather than hiring locals. Or even worse, when they do hire locals, they refuse to pay them their wages. We've seen the videos countless times, right? So they really don't seem to care much about the local cultures or traditions, or even the simple rights of the people living there. So this is where I see a new form of new colonialism emerging. And yes, the Chinese aren't colonizing Africa in the traditional sense, because there are no flags being planted on armies marching in, but they're certainly exerting an enormous amount of economic and political influence. And with all of these massive projects, local people are being pushed aside, and they're not involved in decision-making processes, and their concerns are being disregarded, and their culture is being trampled upon. And don't get me wrong, right? This is not to say that foreign investments are inherently bad, but China's involvement in African development has provided some benefits, such as infrastructure and improved access to trade. But we cannot ignore the costs. We cannot turn a blind eye when entire communities are being displaced, when their rights to their land are being ignored, and when foreign entities are essentially holding the power to determine their future without their consent. The villagers in Modoko are being asked to leave behind everything: their homes, their kettles, their livelihoods, and to accept a fate dictated by a foreign corporation. It's almost like the land isn't even theirs anymore. How can we accept a situation where these mining companies, with the backing of powerful governments, come in, destroy roads, and change the very existence of local communities, all in the name of economic progress. The Zimbabwean government may be looking at this as a necessary step for economic development, but the local people are not feeling the benefits. In fact, they're feeling the burden. The promise of jobs, the claim that these investments are for the betterment of Zimbabwe, which none of this seems to reach the people of Motoko. The lack of consultation with local communities is quite troubling. It's quite clear that the government and the companies don't view the people of Motoko as key stakeholders in these decisions. Their concerns, particularly regarding the displacements of the ancestors' graves, are being dismissed as secondary, and it's quite sad to witness. So the Chinese government may say that they are helping, but what really happens when help turns into exploitation? What happens when development for some comes at the expense of the dignity and survival of others? As Africans, I say it is time we take control of our own futures. We must demand that our governments stand firm in protecting our people and our heritage, and that the land actually belongs to the people and not the foreign corporation and not the foreign governments, and certainly not to anyone who would see it as just a resource to be exploited. What are your thoughts? Let's continue the conversation in the comment section. I'd really like to hear what your thoughts are. And while you're at it, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. That's it from me till we meet again.